Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the economy in Russia, and specifically to talk about the deteriorating relationship with its close neighbour, Finland. Now, Finland and Russia share a border that's 830 miles long, and historically, Finland was actually part of the Russian Empire between 1809 and 1917 when it became independent. But unfortunately, over the past few years, the relationship has started to break down. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, Finland decided that it wanted to apply to join NATO, which is the alliance that obviously Russia is not party to, that includes the USA, the UK, and lots of other European countries. Now, Russia was very unhappy about that application, but Finland pressed ahead, and on the 4th of April 2023, it became the 31st member of NATO. And in December 2023, Finland opened up 15 of its military bases to the USA. And Russia was extremely unhappy about that. And they've said that there will be some sort of retaliatory action, that they haven't decided what that is yet. They certainly haven't declared what it is. And in the most recent news, Finland has now announced that it is banning all Russians from purchasing property within Finland. And this follows on from the news that Finland was closing its border with Russia, and actually it accused Russia of weaponizing migration. They said that Russia were helping facilitate migrants to pass through Russia and enter into Finland. So I'll go through the details of those stories and talk about exactly what's been going on there. And we'll also talk about the fact that Finland was voted as the happiest place in the world. There's recently a report that looks at all different countries in the world, and they've ranked which are the happiest and which are the least happy. So we'll have a look at why Finland was voted at the top of that league and where your country is sitting. And then finally today, I'll wrap up with my summary. So what I think the deteriorating relationship between Finland and Russia means in terms of the ongoing conflict and what's happening in Ukraine. But before we get started on all of that, let's say once again, thank you so much to everyone that's supporting the channel. If you're a long-term supporter of the channel, either through Patreon or YouTube membership, thank you so much for that long-term support. And if you bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks recently, thank you so much for the time and the effort that you've taken to do that. Really appreciate it. Finland's Prime Minister has announced that steps are being taken to address the potential security risks from Russian property holdings near critical infrastructure. For years, Finland allowed Russians to buy up land and real estate without security reviews. But after its neighbour launched a full-scale war against Ukraine in 2022, the Nordic nation has woken up to the risk that such assets could be used against it. Since then, Finland has carried out a full mapping of property holdings by Russians, and Prime Minister Petteri Orpo said, "We see it as a potential security threat that we have Russian and other foreign property owners, landowners in the vicinity of critical infrastructure. Common sense dictates that if we observe a genuine risk to national security, then we ought to be able to act." After pushing through legislation that allows the state to intervene in real estate transactions before they happen, Finland is currently drafting a full ban on property purchases. It would apply to citizens of states whose homeland have been found to have violated the territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence of another state and could threaten Finland's security. The first time Finland blocked the purchase of a property was in late 2022, when the Defence Ministry vetoed the sale of a former nursing home in the west of the country near an army site. It's since made a handful of other similar decisions. Over the last couple of years, Finnish media have reported on a swathe of suspicious assets, including heavily fortified sites with helipads, near-empty loss-making hotels kept afloat by owners with links to Russia, and locations near key rail interchanges and communications links. The risk is that such properties could be used for some acts of damage or possibly as a bridgehead in connection with some larger operation, Orpo said. Finland is now more alert to various forms of influence operations and hybrid warfare after facing acts such as cyber attacks, having asylum seekers pushed onto its 1,300-kilometre border by Russia, and having to divert aircraft that could not land due to the jamming of the global positioning system. The proposal to prevent Russians from acquiring property in Finland comes less than 2 months after Finland increased its laws preventing migrants from entering Finland directly from Russia. So let's talk about that in a bit more detail. Now, as we've just discussed, there are various types of warfare taking place all across the world at the moment. We're not just talking about physical warfare, there are other forms as well. And one of the things that Finland has accused Russia of is weaponizing migration, actually helping to facilitate migrants to move from Russia into Finland to swamp the country and cause it lots of issues. Finland has accused neighbouring Russia of weaponising migration by encouraging scores of migrants from countries such as Syria and Somalia to cross the border, an assertion the Kremlin denies. Over the past 12 months, Finland has faced an inflow of migrants, with Russian authorities known to be assisting people to the border. While the operation was halted after road checkpoints were closed in November, Finland continues to see it as an imminent threat, and President Alexander Stubb told Finnish broadcaster MTV in June that Russia is able to deploy more than 1,000 migrants to the border within a few hours. In order to stop this flow of migrants, Finland's parliament has now voted in favour of a law that allows the Nordic country to push back migrants that Russia sends to its border as part of Moscow's hybrid warfare. The temporary law on instrumentalised immigration will allow Finland to prevent people seeking asylum at or near its eastern border without the possibility of appeal. It's intended to counter what Helsinki deems is an attempt by the Kremlin to undermine the country's national security through migration. This is a strong message to Russia and to our allies that Finland looks after its own security, as well as the border security of the European Union, Prime Minister Petteri Orpo told reporters. Finland is deploying more border guard patrols, drones and electronic detectors, and is building fences along sections of the border. Under the new legislation, Finnish border guards will be able to call on thousands of reservists to help patrol the frontier, to detect migrants' phone signals, to send the migrants to detention centres, and most controversially, to push them back into Russia without accepting their asylum applications. Finland cannot just allow the opening of such a new route for migrants into Europe. Finnish Interior Minister Mari Ratanen said, but overall this is not about a migrant route. This is about a situation in which the authorities of another country are helping or even pressing and pushing migrants to Finland's borders. Now, as I mentioned at the start of today's video, there is actually a World Happiness Report that's produced every single year. And this is a report that looks at a variety of different factors and actually asks people in all of their countries to say how happy they are, to rank their position with regards to how they feel about a variety of different things. And all of that data is then collated, and the happiest countries in the world are ranked from 1 to the bottom. So let's have a look at which countries came top and which countries didn't. This graphic shows the overall rankings of the World Happiness Report for 2024 based on a variety of different factors. And as you can see, right at the top of this list is Finland, the country that we've been talking about in today's video, who are not very happy being neighbours of Russia. Now, I don't know whether or not the fact that they've closed their border to migrants and also they're stopping Russians from buying property have had any influence on the happiness factor for the people of Finland, but they're still ranked at number 1. Number 2 in this list is Denmark, followed by Iceland and Sweden. So what that tells me is that Scandinavia is a very happy place to be, despite the fact that the climate isn't that good and they have quite dark days during the winter because it doesn't get light for very long. Even with all of those factors, they're still the 4 happiest countries on Earth. Number 5 is Israel. Now, I don't know whether that is still the situation, given what's been happening in Israel over the past 6 months or so, but that's what the ranking was when all of these factors were taken into account. Number 6 is the Netherlands. 7 is Norway, yet another Scandinavian country. Number 8 is Luxembourg. Number 9, Switzerland. And number 10, Australia. Now, I know it really upsets some viewers if I start reading things out because everybody says, well, I can pause that and look it up myself. But as you know, a lot of people who watch the channel don't actually watch the channel. They're just listening to me talking while they're doing something else, going for a walk, taking the dog out, cooking a tea, doing whatever they want. So I'm not going to apologise for reading the list out, but I will pick out some other countries that I know I have big viewerships in. Canada comes in at number 15 on this list. Ireland is number 17. The United Kingdom, number 20. And interestingly, the United States only ranks at number 23, so I think that's quite surprising. And Germany is number 24. Mexico comes in at number 25, and interestingly, El Salvador, that I've covered in a number of videos, predominantly talking about the largest prison in the world that was set up for the gangs, is ranked at number 33. And I think that's a major turnaround because only a few years ago, El Salvador had the highest homicide rate in the world and was seen as being one of the most dangerous countries to live in. Now, as I mentioned, that first table was the general ranking. That was the overall score. But we've actually got a breakdown depending on the age of the people that were interviewed. And there is quite a big difference depending on whether you are young or old. So if we start off by looking at Finland, you can see that it ranked at number 1 across all the age groups. However, the youngest people in Finland only ranked it at number 7, and it seems that the older people are happier than the younger, and that may be down to the cost of living. It's quite an expensive country to live in. Now, the next two countries on the list, Denmark and Iceland, have scored pretty highly across all of the different age groups. But interestingly, if you look at Sweden, which ranked at number 4 across all of the age groups, it actually ranked 18th amongst the youngest people in Sweden. And I think once again, that's probably to do with the fact that it is an expensive country to live in. And if you're young, it's going to be very difficult to be able to do all of the things that you want to. And I think that same principle applies to Norway, which came in at number 7 across all of the age groups, but ranked at number 20 amongst the young people, but number 3 against the old people. If we have a look at the situation for Australia, which ranked at number 10 across all of the age groups, it actually ranked at number 9 amongst the older generation, but 19 amongst the youngest. And the same applied to New Zealand. It was number 11 across all the age groups, but for the young people, it came in at number 27. If we jump down and have a look at the situation for the United Kingdom, which came in at number 20 across all age groups, that's exactly where it scored amongst the older people who were interviewed. But for the younger people, it came in at number 32. So once again, the UK isn't as happy a place to live. If you're young, it's better to be old. And the same applies to the United States, which came in at number 23 on the overall rankings. But when you look at the difference in the young and the old, the young people ranked it at number 62, which is almost 3 times lower than its actual ranking, whereas the old people ranked it at number 10. So once again, this tells us if you're old and therefore probably better off and a bit more wealthy and have a bit more cash, then the USA is a nice place to live. If you're young, it isn't so much fun. So I thought that was an interesting report to share with you. It came to front of mind because Finland ranked at number 1 globally, and because we're talking about Finland in today's video, I thought I'd segue into it. And if you want me to cover this in a bit more detail, please let me know in the comments, and I may post a separate video on it. But if you want to look it up yourself, just type in World Happiness Report 2024 into Google, and you'll soon find it. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because I think what's happening with the relationship between Finland and Russia is really quite interesting. These are countries that have been long-term neighbours. In fact, Finland previously was part of the Russian Empire, so they've got a lot of history. But unfortunately, over the last 10 or 15 years, Finland has become more and more concerned about the security risks that it faces as being a direct neighbour of Russia. Now, fortunately, from Finland's point of view, it would be quite difficult for Russia to roll lots of tanks into Finland because there is dense forest between the two countries. So it's not really a very easy border for Russia to storm over. But even so, it's very, very close. Russia has actually been building forces on the other side of the border over the past few years, and Finland became concerned about that. And one of the reasons why Russia was concerned about Finland joining NATO is because of the proximity, because as a member of NATO, obviously Finland then offers the opportunity for bases to be set up. So weapons, missiles and fighter jets could be located in Finland, which could then easily access Russia. And that was Russia's main concern. But following the invasion of Ukraine, Finland decided that that was the final straw that had broken the camel's back, and they were going to push on and apply for membership of NATO. Now, Russia did do a lot of threatening. They said that if that happened, there would be repercussions. Finland decided that they didn't care about that. They pushed on with the application, and on the 4th of April 2023, they became the 31st member of NATO. Now, Russia is still unhappy about that. And the warfare that we talked about earlier in today's video of actually sending migrants over the border, helping people from places like Somalia and Syria to move through Russia and go to Finland, is all part of what Finland has referred to as the weaponization of migration. And this really tells us that the relationship has broken down irretrievably. And the fact that the USA now has access to 15 military bases in Finland, I think, is making things worse. So I don't think we're going to see any reparation of this relationship, even if Russia withdrew from Ukraine next week, which I think is pretty unlikely. I don't think Finland would be looking to revoke their membership of NATO and to open up their borders to Russians. And I think the fact that Russians have now been banned from buying property in Finland really shows that there are rising concerns within Finland that Russia may be looking to do things on a longer term basis to try to get some sort of foothold in the event of something happening in the future. So the overall summary of today's video is that the relationship between Finland and Russia has broken down irretrievably over the course of the last couple of years. Finland is now firmly a member of NATO. It's looking at the alliance, it's talking to countries like the USA in terms of its military strategy. And obviously from Russia's point of view, they are very unhappy about that because they now have the enemy all across their border. But unfortunately from Russia's point of view, there isn't really anything that they can do about it. And it will be interesting to see what happens, whether or not Finland introduce more legislation over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, banning more Russians from doing more things. And if they do, I'll keep you posted. But hopefully you found today's video useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end. And here's something to put a smile on your face.